Hello, welcome once again to the Sophie Scholl Society. I'm Mel McGinnis, and with me is Dr. Deanne Nelson. We've been talking about the dark agenda, the left's war to destroy Christianity in America. A book that is similar to what has been written by David Horowitz is a book I featured before by Dinesh D'Souza, The Big Lie. How the left is part of the outgrowth of the roots of Nazism. You see, fascism, Nazism is on the left. You will hear those in the media, those in academic places, universities, colleges, say that fascism is on the right. No, it's not. It's a leftist philosophy because fascism, communism, socialism are all cut from the same cloth. They want government power concentrated. They want government power centralized. They want government power located to control the lives of the people economically, culturally, and in a way that religiously cleanses especially any vestige, notion, or indication of Christianity. Appreciate Deanne being with me here today on the Sophie Scholl Society, because as we've been talking about what's been taking place in a school district like Clymer, we notice that it's far away from what the original intent of our founders were. The way our founders first set up power is what you see in this triangle. This triangle shows you the kind of power structure that our nation was to have. See, where decisions politically were to be made mostly was within the local level. Notice the big block there at the bottom part of the triangle. Then you have power at the state level. And finally at the top, you have a little triangle at the federal level. This is the triangle of power that our founders wanted this nation to have. However, here we are in 2019, and something has dramatically switched. Do you notice how the triangle has been turned upside down? And as the triangle has been turned upside down, you see the federal power gaining all the more acquisition of control over our lives, as illustrated by the block of power you see at the top. You see limited state power, and then by the time you get to the bottom of the triangle, you see very little local power left. How much power does the school board at Clymer have in deciding whether it wants to have a baccalaureate, deciding whether they want prayers being said at school? You see, the left wants to put that power in the federal government in such a way that it imposes a restriction on the people of Clymer to freely exercise the kind of religious aspects of a ceremony in their graduation and at their baccalaureate. So much so that when you have individuals from the Freedom from Religion Foundation say, don't have it on the school grounds, you can have it at the church, to me, that indicates a taking away of the control over that decision from a local entity and putting it in the hands of a powerful centralized government. So that the local district has this little bit of power and they can have it at a church, which I'm grateful for, the Clymer United Methodist Church, opening up their building for that baccalaureate. But what we see is the limitation of the control of that decision being taken away from that local district. And Deanne has been sharing with us what kind of led up to this. I mean, we went over some cases earlier in the 60s. We went over some cases in the 70s. But this had an emboldening effect. Can you talk about that effect, Deanne?
Well, they were emboldened by the outcomes of these other cases, and so the attitude of people now was that they would become aggressive. They were using actually the Alinsky tactics on various people and various groups in order to get their way. And Alinsky said that the issue is never the issue is always the revolution. And so that's what this has become, a revolution to turn us to the left, to turn us to a more Marxist society. But we saw some examples, for instance, when Judge Bork was being questioned for to become on the Supreme Court. Ted Kennedy, very emboldened and malicious toward this man, was destroyed him, and he destroyed his reputation, and he was not put on the Supreme Court because of this.
Isn't it interesting that as Bork was prevented from going on to the Supreme Court, who ended up on it? Kennedy.
Oh, Kennedy.
Yeah. And he's been one. Now he's off the court, but he's been, unfortunately, one who has...
But it was Ted Kennedy that was against...
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Ted Kennedy against.
Yeah,
and
against Bork.
Justice, what was his first name? I can't remember his first name, but Justice... Robert Kennedy, yeah. To be...
Robert Bork.
Robert Bork,
Yeah.
But Justice Kennedy,
Yeah.
He became more liberal
Yes, he
as
did.
he was on the court.
Yes. So then we also had movement into the Gay Liberation Front. We had, out of that came a horrible AIDS epidemic in our country because they said they wanted unlimited sex with anyone with whom they chose. But after that, then we had I don't know if it was repealed, but the Marriage Act of 1996, let's see, that was called what? Defense of Marriage Act, that was voided. So we moved into same-sex marriages. This is an outcome. The military were not allowed to talk about their faith to anyone for fear of court-martial. So all of these things have come about now, and so that's why individual people become more emboldened. For instance, whoever did this at Clymer, more emboldened to act out their ideology and put their ideology onto others who are not willing.
And it's interesting, you bring up the marriage issue, the redefinition of marriage. Who decided that in the end? Not the people,
No.
Not the legislature, not the law aspect of government. It was the
Supreme Court.
Supreme
decided that.
Court.
Yes. The liberals on the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
It's as if they don't know their own constitution.
Correct. It's like they don't even know their own constitution. They arrogated to themselves power that they really did not have, but having that power, it went to their heads, so they imposed their opinion on the rest of us.
Yes. And then, of course, when Obama came in, that just accelerated things, and we had horrible things like the Little Sisters of the Poor. They had to initiate a lawsuit against the administration because of how they were being treated and what they were forced to do. And then I thought this was an example of Hillary's campaign was called a war on women. There is no war on women, but they're trying to move us into various groups, and this is identity politics. So suppression, they're talking about suppression against all of these groups and discrimination, and of course it's people like Hillary and Obama who are going to decide what is good for all of us, not for, ours has always been based upon individual rights, not collective rights.
And I think that's an important distinction to make, because our founders, our framer, really highlighted individual rights, rather than these collective rights, which are basically Marxist.
Yes, they are.
And Marxism and our Constitution are totally opposed to one another, just as Islam and our Constitution are opposed to one another. But Marxists will use our Constitution against us in order to bring about their agenda, just as Islam uses our Constitution in order to gain the advantage, while in the end they want to see it discarded in place of Sharia law.
Yes.
Well, we've come up to 10 minutes, and glad you could be with us here again on the Sophie Scholl Society. Anything else you want to bring up?